Okay, can we move on? Councillor Ireland. Thank you very much, Provost. I'm actually going to extend a welcome to the residents of Netherley behind me. They might not want my welcome, but it's actually, I'm really pleased to see so many of them here. I am a resident of Netherley myself. I live in one of the streets that we're actually discussing tonight. I would stress that I've made this decision to support the amendment. It's not a political one. It's a result of my own detailed research. It's not political in the slightest. We've been asked to overrule a direct operational management decision taken as a delegated decision, one which has been taken on genuine health and safety grounds. That's why I had to pass that round. I will not, under any circumstances, take part in any political grandstanding on an issue of health and safety. That safety of Netherley residents and council staff comes before any political point scoring and self-promotion. Regarding these recent changes brought into Netherley, I read thoroughly every email and listened very closely to every point. I heard my neighbours and I took all their questions into a meeting that we had with councillors, the cleansing department and frontline workers, the guys who are actually working within the lanes. During this meeting, a detailed presentation was given, and that's why I've given you the pictures, because that was part of the detailed presentation. What became very quickly apparent during this was that the council are making these changes solely due to health and safety issues regarding collection from some of the lanes in Netherley. They did make several very genuine arguments for transferring the weekly collection to the end of the lanes. At the end of this meeting, all councillors remaining, I know that Councillor Miller had left just shortly before, were satisfied with the explanations given and agreed to pass this information on to local residents. It's a fact. One point raised by my neighbours. Then to sum up, if you have any issues, but please do not interrupt any of the councillors who are speaking. Please respect your fellow councillors. One point raised by my neighbours was their anger with the perceived lack of consultation and the feeling that the decision came in quite quickly. Exact point was one that was discussed really robustly at that meeting that they gave the presentation, and I was really pleased that agreement was reached, talking to the councillors, the ward councillors, that take this on board if any future collection changes were to be brought in. There were also many concerns received by councillors regarding elderly or disabled residents and the very real difficulties they may have in taking their bins to the end of the lane. There is currently an assisted collection service which can help residents. And if anyone needs help, contact me, let me know. I will sort it out. I'll get the cleansing department are more than happy to deal with this. I completely agree with the amendment, and in that the council has a duty of care to the public as well as their workforce, both of them. Without a doubt, a danger has been identified, and it's only a matter of time if these lorries are allowed back into this environment that someone will be gravely injured. It's just true. The lanes in Netherley have incurred significant issues over a long period of time due to overhanging trees, poor surfaces, width restrictions mainly, parked cars and vans. The drivers often find themselves in the lane before discovering they're unable to drive out the other end, and they're forced to reverse, a manoeuvre which is so dangerous. The lanes are completely unsuitable for reversing as they do not allow appropriate positioning of the guiding assistant, which must be a metre out from the side of the van. The Health and Safety Executive in 2015 guidance states that nearly a quarter of all deaths involving vehicles at work occurred during reversing, and the guidance they're putting out is to remove the need for reversing altogether. The Waste Industry Safety and Health Forum guidance, which I've put in the pack, issued in the same year, say that in order to reduce the risks wherever possible, you should control the risks by eliminating reversing and reducing distance reversed. This is all I found when I looked for myself online. I was able to very quickly identify, and I hated it, 15 fatalities and 2 instances of serious injury caused by reversing. In every case, it was reversing. All deaths are from 2002, both from collection teams and local residents, ranging in age from 17 months to 91 years, and I believe the 91 years was actually within our own authority. I found this catalogue of deaths to be disturbingly illuminating as to the very serious dangers associated with reversing bin lorries. An article in the Scottish Sun, I've also included that, investigated the amount of injuries and deaths Their number of injuries was 400 in 5 years. Deaths, 7 in 5 years. That was to 2015. It will be more now. Like most here, I became a councillor in order to serve my community. If I turned my back on my own extensive research, health and safety recommendations of East Renfrewshire Council, the Health and Safety Executive Guidance, Waste Industry Safety and Health Forum Guidance, other local authority findings after their own tragedies, trade unions, not to mention the information received through FOIs and reported in the press, I would not be serving that community. I would be committing a grave disservice to my neighbours and placing them in harm's way in order to score cheap political points. I will not do this. I live in that lane. My own children use this lane every single day. I ask you to accept the amendment and reject the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ireland. I will now throw it open to any other councillors who wish to contribute. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Provost. I also attended the meeting on the 3rd of November and listened to the case put forward by the Cleansing Department, and I was a bit concerned with the use of the word legislation. Like Councillor MacDonald, I queried this a few days later. I sent about 3 emails to the Cleansing Department, 2 to the Legal Department, and I discovered it was from old health and safety legislation, but strengthened after the fatal accident in Giffnock. And after that incident, the council was served with a health and safety notice, so we had to do something. And from then on, to me, the lanes were a no-go. During my research, I spoke to the Environment Department, Cleansing Department, Binman themselves, Legal Department, along with independent solicitors, contrary to what the seconder said, local residents, and even folk from other councils. I started off by opposing the Cleansing Department on this issue, and through my independent research it became crystal clear by doing so I'd either be breaking the law or spirit of the law. There was no way that I had the knowledge or expertise to doubt judges or lawyers. Therefore, I find it surprising, quite ironic, that the seconder to this motion is a lawyer.
Yeah, what are you talking about, Stuart?
Please stop interrupting individuals, councillors, when they're making their contribution. Respect your fellow councillors.
Frequently asked questions on this issue is why are all other councils not doing the same? The answer is simple. All other councils are doing the same. This very morning I spoke to a former local resident who moved to Rochterarder, and he told me that Perth and Kinross Council are doing exactly the same. In conclusion, I feel that the proposer and seconder of this motion had gone to and spoken to the Environment and Cleansing Departments as to the reason why the decision was taken. They would have found out that the status quo is simply not an option. I find it concerning that they proposed this motion without suggesting a credible alternative, and I am sure that the Department would be delighted to discuss any alternative. The only other reason for bringing this motion is to gain political capital, and frankly I find it despicable that a councillor would use such a means as to raid people's hopes. And a lot of local residents who are elderly, when they knew perfectly well that the Department was not going to revert back to the status quo. Because of that, some people even think this is a spat between councillors when nothing could be further from the truth. This decision was taken on safety grounds alone and nothing else. That is the safety for the bin operatives and local residents, because if an elderly resident couldn't get out of the way, or a young child ran in front of a reversing bin lorry, such as happened in Giffnock, then I dread to think what might happen. And just because nothing has happened in this area in the past, it doesn't mean that nothing is going to happen in the future. Much as I love opposing the administration, I find I have no other option but to abide by the law and support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Swift.
The legal advice that Councillor Miller or Councillor Aiken suggested that Councillor Miller had, I have seen, and it was actually by a lawyer.
Let's see the copy of that.
Continue, Councillor Swift, and again for the third time, Councillor Aiken, please stop interrupting.
I have seen the legal advice. Do you know, it's sometimes difficult to have sympathy with some people, but I actually have significant sympathy with Councillor MacDonald and his motion and what he would be trying to do for local residents. Bins left out at the end of the road are a hazard. I mean, this is not a no-hazard kind of change, because there are hazards to having people walking around on lanes that are slippy with heavy bins and things like that. I must say, though, as Councillor Ireland said, if there are older residents, vulnerable residents, people who are unable to take their bins, the council will help them and will take their bins for them. I do feel they've tried the little wagons and they're just not big enough. They've tried the smaller bin lorries, but they're almost the same size as the big lorries. So there's like a few inches of difference in girth and width. So actually, I'm kind of with Councillor Miller here. There is no practical alternative that has been put forward by anybody, and quite clearly there are health and safety risks and implications. So I have to say, I would love to support the amendment, or the motion rather. I would genuinely like to do that. But I don't think that's possible, and I don't think it's responsible, and I don't think any serious politician would support that. So I would like to say, well, that's probably as much as I'm going to say, actually.
Councillor Swift. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Provost. I'd just like to just say how uncomfortable I feel, along with Councillor Swift, having to go along with the administration here. It gives me no pleasure whatsoever. But what I would say is, I do recall this happening in 2006. I became a councillor in 2007 when these new guidelines came through, and we had the lanes. You'll remember this, Provost, at Giffnock Park Avenue, which is affected. And there's a number of elderly residents that live there, and there was a bit of an uproar. And I must admit, it seemed that this was a perfect opportunity for me to make my name. But when I actually looked at the ins and outs of this, if I was to put my name to something like this, it would not be doing me any favours whatsoever. We did go through a period of time which we gave quite a bit of assistance to local people, particularly the elderly. There were council people came along to help with the bins, and I think you've already offered that. Is that correct? Yes. There were people coming along to give as much assistance as possible. It's not as if it's been left to residents to do this. One of the things that really got people riled was the thought of having to put their bins at the front of their houses. But what I think we actually found was that if you actually go up and down Fenwick Road now, which is the other side of Giffnock Park Avenue, you don't see any bins out the front, because quite clearly it seems to be working reasonably well. It just took a long period of adjustment. But I do share the discomfort that residents will have at this change, but I don't feel, speaking as a ward councillor who's had to go through this before many years ago, I couldn't possibly put my name to anything that was going to put anyone at risk, be it council employees or residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. And I will say, as a fellow ward councillor who was there at the time, I do share that, and I do recall. I mean, this is an issue that doesn't just affect Netherlee. Substantial parts of Giffnock have very similar housing. But it was a particularly tragic event when an elderly gentleman was killed by one of our bin lorries in our ward, and it's not something I would ever want to live through again. Can I open any other comments? Councillor Merrick.
I would just like to give an observation, if I can. Yeah, communities, first of all, the most important people here are the residents, and I do empathise with the residents in this case, right? But communities do elect us to represent their interests. As an aside, I'm just wondering what the community who elected Councillor Aitken may now be thinking less than a year after they elected him. However, usually as councillors, we receive many calls about cleansing or aspects of cleansing. And they're ordinarily resolved by dialogue between the residents and the department, facilitated by the councillor. But in this case, that is singularly failed. I can't support Councillor MacDonald's motion because health and safety trumps everything. And I'm sorry for the residents, but we did hear about there are assisted collections, etc. But health and safety has to override everything else in this case.
Contributions, Councillor Buchanan.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. Just to echo some of the comments that have been made and thank Councillor Ireland for the very in-depth presentation that she provided and the research that she has done in bringing this forward, because it is very much along the lines of supporting the decision that our Environment Department has made. This isn't a political issue, it's the furthest thing from it. The paramount aspect of this issue is the health and safety of our staff and our residents. And that trumps everything, because we have to look after everyone across the board. If you don't mind,
sir, will you please be quiet or I'll clear the gallery?
the health and safety aspect is paramount, because the last thing that we could have as councillors would be to vote for something that may well cause injury or far worse. That would be absolutely ludicrous. There is quite clearly legislation which supports the decision and quite clearly gives guidance on the aspects during the bin collection process. Councillor MacDonald himself, in his opening speech and contribution, suggested, and indeed implied, that it wasn't safe to transport the bins because of poor lighting. If it's not safe to transport your bin, it's certainly not safe for a lorry going into those lanes and reversing. It is absolutely ludicrous that you can compare that and say that there is a difference. This decision has been made for very valid reasons and very valid grounds. That decision, therefore, should stand, and I'm more than happy to support the amendment and reject the motion.
Again, for the fourth time, if anybody continues to interrupt, I will clear the gallery. The motion will be heard and we will reach a decision. Please respect the speakers. You're here to listen to the debate, not to contribute, and I don't wish to clear the gallery, but I will if I have to. Okay? Can I be any more clear than that? Does anybody else wish to contribute to the debate? Okay. Can I invite Councillor MacDonald to sum up then? You have 5 minutes, Councillor MacDonald, to respond to the points you've heard.
Thank you, Provost. First off, I just wanted to respond to a couple of comments that Councillor Lafferty had made early on. With regards to his accusations that I'm personally attacking people, I'm not personally attacking people.
Who's the other one? It's Councillor Aiken, thank you. The other one.
Well, if that's a mute point then, I was going to say that I was merely sharing an email that Councillor Ireland had shared with me, both as with her learned opinion, both as the planning chair and also a Netherley resident, and I was taking on those points that she was making to me in a genuine fashion. I would also say that he mentioned that that he would be failing in his duty as a councillor, backing away from the council. But what I would say in retort to that is, what about failing in your duty as a councillor, backing away from the people who voted for you? Is that not important? Second of all, just to finish up specifically on representation and why I stood. Back in April of 2017, when I decided to throw my name in the hat to become a member of this chamber, I did so for one reason only, and that was to represent the rights of people and to try to play my part in making the lives of those better, to make our local authority more transparent, accountable and responsible in how it provides frontline services. I'm mindful of that role of an elected councillor is to both serve the interests of the people who elected you and also those of the local authority. I accept the latter as one of the responsibilities, but I would also say that it was never my primary reason for running. After all, until that moment I was elected, I was a resident like everybody else. Over 2,000 voters put a number next to my name and subsequently elected me to represent an electorate of over 16,000 people. I tried to represent each one of the electorate to the best of my ability, regardless if I was their preferred candidate or not, or even if they did not vote. If ever there was a clear-cut case for an elected representative to stand up and do what is right for those that they represent, then it would be a case like this. I want to appeal to each one of my elected member colleagues to, for just one moment, think of each of the people who placed their confidence in you and placed a number next to your name. What would they be hoping that you do at this very moment? What would they expect you to do? Be mindful not of your membership of a political group, or, if you're in administration or opposition, a convener or a chair of a committee. Be mindful of your role as that of a councillor and the responsibility and power that that position affords you. Now I ask you for one moment to put all your differences with each other and with me aside. There's a gallery of people here tonight, many of those who are adversely affected by this change in Netherlee. And I would ask you to be mindful of the fact that each one of you have the power to collectively come together and do the right thing for these people. Politics very often can be a fractured, disingenuous, divisive, and sometimes ugly affair for many. But it can also be what it is designed to be, a force for good, a collective power to right wrongs and to recall bad decisions. I would ask you respectfully to now reconsider any previous position you might have had against this motion when you first arrived in the chamber this evening, and to come together and do the right thing for people who are really counting on you. This is your moment to show them that you can make a good decision that will make a big difference in their lives. In summing up, Provost, I would say that if any or all of the political groups from Labour, the SNP and the Conservative Party would like to take a recess for a few moments to consider their decision, then there is no shame in doing that. At the very least, they can be sure to show people here today that they are making group decisions based on the information that has now been presented to them this evening. I would also like to move that this vote is a roll call vote, and would ask that we would have the support of a third member on that in a move to increase transparency. Finally, I want to thank all of the residents of Netherlee that have shown me support and encouragement for the past 6 months in bringing this motion today for consideration. I'm glad that we have brought this motion to full council. I believe that each and every one of you deserve to have your voices heard, and for all the issues that you have endured to be considered. I also wish to thank my seconder, Councillor Paul Aitken, for his support in bringing this motion today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for summing up, Councillor MacDonald. I would now propose to go to the vote. And I don't think there's a majority for a roll call vote, and frankly I don't think we need one, because we will...
Is it not 3 that we need?
Well, I require 3 councillors if you think that's required. Do you have a third?
I was hoping that we would have at least one person that would support Councillor Rennick and I with regards to a roll call vote to show transparency on this vote.
Well, I think there'll be plenty of transparency.
Fair enough.
I don't
Fair
think
enough. We don't know how it's going to go, I suppose. Not everybody has spoken.
Okay. Right, I propose to go to the vote, and we vote for the motion first. So all those in favour of Councillor MacDonald's motion, please raise their hand. Okay. All those in favour of Councillor Lafferty's amendment, please raise their hand.
Okay, 2 for the motion, 15 for the amendment.
Okay. The result is 2 for the motion and 15 for the amendment. Okay. So the amendment is obviously carried, and can we now move on to item 7 on the papers in front of you, which is statements by conveners or representatives of the joint boards and committees. I'll just allow a minute for there's some people wishing now to leave the gallery before I invite the...
Got to get our bins out tonight.
Gentlemen and trained professionals, they can go up from
Can we not have a dialogue, please? We'll just give the people a minute or two to leave if they wish to go now. Okay, can we continue? I think we have a statement from Councillor Bamforth in the IJB, a regular statement.
Thank you, Provost. I don't have a formal statement to make as there hasn't been a further IJB since our council meeting on the 2nd of March to update you on. I did, however, attend a strategic commissioning planning workshop to understand the demands and the challenges faced by the HSCP in the coming years. The workshop looked at the changing patterns of demand, related activity and the cost implications, and was well attended by local health and care practitioners, community planning partners and our providers.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bamforth. And Councillor Merrick wishes to make a statement.
Thank you, Provost. It was just to draw to colleagues' attention a couple of awards that the Corporate and Community Services Department's Young Services team have won. So, colleagues, you're aware of the success of the Corporate and Community Services Department's Young Person Services team in achieving a Gold COSLA award earlier this year for its work in reducing teenage pregnancies in Auchenback Barrhead earlier this year. It gives me great pleasure to inform you of two other awards recently achieved by the service. At the National Youth Work Awards held in Glasgow on the 15th of March, Young Person Services team leader Heather Layton received a Lifetime Achievement Award for her services to young people. Since joining the Council 20 years ago in 1997, and I hope my sums are correct, Heather became a key figure in the life of the young people that she worked with. The award has recognised her as a motivational, supportive and enthusiastic officer who consistently leads improvements to the service year on year, providing high-quality services to young people in East Renfrewshire. In particular, Heather's leadership enabled the team to work with young people across the authority, supporting them to secure recognised and accredited achievements, with almost 2,000 recognised awards being achieved by young people in the last year alone. I'm sure you'll join me in expressing our gratitude to Heather, not only for her continued hard work for young people in East Renfrewshire, but also in achieving this national recognition. Also, at the Local Government Chronicle Awards held in London on Wednesday, the 21st, last Wednesday, the Young Person Services team won the Improving Public Health category. This was again in recognition of the significant success the team has achieved in reducing teenage pregnancies in Auchenback. Commenting on the award, which was achieved against stiff competition from across the UK, the award panel stated this was a clear winner. They commented on the team's willingness to share knowledge. They commented on the long-term commitment to improve services, and the risk assessment matrix stood out as a great example for other councils to follow. So that's a team that works in our council, providing an example for councils across the UK to follow. Colleagues, I'm sure you will join me in sending our sincere congratulations to the team, which is led by Jim Snedden and Jamie Reid, and agree with me that these accolades are well deserved and testimony to the hard work, enthusiasm and commitment delivered by the team to ensure the best possible opportunities for young people in East Renfrewshire. Thank you.
Councillor Merrick, and I'm sure we'd all across the chamber of every party and not actually endorse that. I saw some of the stuff on Twitter and it's absolutely excellent and hugely proud of the people involved in it, and please convey, I think, the thanks to the officers, if they could convey thanks to the staff involved. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 8, which is the Teaching Staff Appeals Committee. I'm looking for Council's approval this evening to replace Councillor Aiken with Councillor McLean on the Appeals Committee. This is because Councillor McLean has replaced Councillor Aiken on the Education Committee and required to be on the Education Committee to be on the Appeals Committee. Okay, straightforward, happy? Yep. Item 9, Provost Engagements, just for noting. And item number 10 is an early years strategy update. We have a presentation here this evening from Mrs Julie Murray and Mrs Janice Collins. So it's a double act. So could I pass over to Julie and to Janice for the presentation, and we can have some questions at the end of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. I've never done a presentation sort of sitting down before, but I think this is how it works. So great to have an opportunity to talk to you. The purpose of this is really just to give you an update and actually bring to life some of what's in the paper in front of you, and draw your attention to some of the key achievements of the plan. Because actually there's some really promising things, and I hope you'll agree once you've had a chance to listen to us. But also I thought it would be useful to give some of our newer elected members some of the background information as to the genesis of the strategy and how we got to where we are. The next slide, sorry, Janice, really is the aims of the Early Years Collaborative, which was launched in 2012. But actually, in East Renfrewshire, our interest in early years predated that. Some of you will remember, certainly it made a big impact on myself and others, that we had Sir Harry Burns. I can't remember whether he was a sir at the time, but it was quite a long time ago. Harry Burns at some development sessions for us as senior officers, but also for elected members, really about the impact of disadvantage and the importance of the first years and parenting to children, to the outcomes for the future. So when the collaborative was announced in 2012, and clearly the aim is to make Scotland the best place in the world to grow up. I won't read it out because I'm sure you can. We grasped this with great enthusiasm in East Renfrewshire. We worked very closely across departments, HSCP, and across the third sector on this, and it's really supported our joint working. Just for those of you who don't know, the Early Years Collaborative was a national strategy, was led nationally by Sir Harry Burns and Professor Jason Leach, and again, just recognising the critical importance of the first years of life in influencing outcomes in later life. And there was a real focus on improvement science, actually, in the early years of the collaborative. So in response to the collaborative, we quickly developed our own early years strategy. And you can see that there were a number of principles, really about deepening our partnership working to more effectively focus on quick, effective intervention, not worrying about barriers and boundaries, working much more closely together, looking at realigning some of the resource across agencies to shift towards prevention, recognising that it's actually good to try and prevent rather than deal with crisis. Using data and improvement science was very much a feature of this, and really engaging quite differently with our communities to learn from their experience and developing solutions together. And we started with our most deprived communities in that. We had some funding, Early Years Change Fund, that was made available to pump prime this work and to create some sort of programme management capacity. So we've made a lot of progress since then. When we first started out in this, and we were encouraged in this by Scottish Government, the Early Years Collaborative work was quite separate to some of our mainstream planning activity and within the realms of children's services and community planning. We were encouraged to have a programme manager supported by a data manager. We were encouraged to develop lots of additional projects to look at testing for success. And we actually realised that this was too much of a scattergun approach, and we were in danger of not sustaining. So we took stock a few years ago and have now fully integrated the early years work within our children's planning, children's services plan. It's the responsibility of all of us. We don't feel we need a programme manager anymore. We still need some data analysis because we need to make sure we are actually making a difference. And some of this taking stock was for us to sort of focus on some of the key programmes that seemed to be actually having an impact, that had the most evidence behind them. So we've realigned that. And as I say, initially, as I said, the Change Fund was about pump priming and trying new things to mainstream. we have decided that we need to protect this investment, because with the reduction in our core budgets, it's a bit harder to mainstream some of these things, and we think this is so promising. And actually, we're in it for the long term, that we have actually looked at mainstreaming the remaining change fund to protect our collective investment, and I think that's to be welcomed. So the paper outlines the progress we've made to date. Janice is just going to take you through a few slides, and we're conscious of the time, so we'll try and be as brief as we can. A few slides just to sort of look at some of the key achievements over the last wee while, and then I'll just round up at the end.
Okay. Thank you, Julie. So the strategy evolved really from its introduction in 2013 to a more updated and focused. As Julie mentioned, we moved away from experimenting with the improvement science approach and having lots of projects which we couldn't keep track of, although we knew some were making a difference, to a more strategic and focused themes, and the themes are displayed up there for you. We were looking at intervention, really that increased parental confidence. We were committed that if you get parenting right, then that's probably the most important prevention tool that we could have. We also wanted to make sure that the support we had for families really not only impacted on families but reduced the financial pressures on children, but indeed reduced the financial pressures on departments. As Julie alluded to, there was a wee bit of crisis management previously, and we wanted to move away and have that focus on prevention and indeed early intervention. So we engaged with our communities and we increased opportunities for parents. We are now more focused on improving outcomes and reducing inequalities, and you will notice from some of the projects we did target some of our most vulnerable areas. However, the success of the projects have allowed us to scale up across the whole of East Renfrewshire, and many of the things that started in 2013 in SIMD areas of 1 and 2, primarily in Barrhead and Neilston, have now moved to this side of the authority. But we also wanted to improve maternal health and wellbeing, and I'll talk a wee bit about some of the additional funding and how we used it and how we're delighted that it's been mainstream. But all along this high quality early learning and childcare, and giving children, not just in Scotland but indeed in East Renfrewshire, the best start that we can possibly give them. So targeted interventions. A lot of you may have heard about Family First. Family First is a preventative service, and Family First really came out from us tracking customer journeys and tracking back to see how much it cost us to support families who were in crisis. And when we tracked back their journeys, we realised that some of these families, if they had got a little bit of help just at the beginning, would not have needed some of the support from our statutory departments, and mainly social work. So we introduced the service of 2 workers as a Family First approach in 2015-16. Although the slide is capturing the number of parents, we do have lots of information that show you about how it has reduced the spend in other departments and has allowed us to actually meet the savings that we've been able to do in subsequent years. So if anyone is interested, I'd be happy to speak to you about that at a later time, but I'm aware that we are pressed for time. Moving to 2017, we were fortunate we were able to scale up the Family First workers, so they were not only just offering a wee bit of support, and that support might be about bedtime routines, it might have been about behaviour, it might have been about having the confidence to actually access services independently by themselves. There's a whole host of little bits of help that people received. To 2017, where we have got 4 family workers. Can I say that the latest data show that while 26% of our residents who are accessing the Family First live in SIMD 1 and 2, we are noticing that parents in this side of the authority are needing that little bit of help just as much. So we do monitor that. Parenting programmes, we've been very good at offering a real breadth of parenting programmes for a long time. However, when we tried to analyse the impact of parenting programmes, we realised we were not very good at gathering that data or indeed analysing it. And when we did try to drill down, we realised that some parents were being offered the exact same parenting intervention 2 or 3 times. And we were not skilled or indeed had mapped our programmes to parenting programmes to try something a little bit different. So we were fortunate that we
were successful in a partnership with the NHS Education Scotland programme called Psychology of Parenting Project, and many of you may have heard some of your constituents talking about POP. I think the success of POP is not just about the number of families who have completed the POP programme. Children who are signposted to POP are not reaching all of their developmental milestones at 30 months. And we've got evidence that 86% of our children and families who complete the POP programme have achieved those developmental milestones by the end of it. So real evidence that we're making a difference and closing that gap. But also, more importantly, parents who have worked and been involved in the POP programme have now started to work with adult learning. They are in employment, or indeed they are volunteering in our nurseries and our schools and building confidence and showcasing and supporting other parents in how to parent. And I think we should talk also about the national recognition. East Renfrewshire was highly commended as the Gold Standard Award for the POP programme, and our improvement in impact on parents is second to none. Moving on to accessible and effective support for families, and there's many areas that the report outlines, but I've just picked out one of the things about living in poverty. Many parents live in poverty in East Renfrewshire, both in the east and the west of the authority. Can I say the 17-18 data looks as if it's not been successful? 17-18 data is only 6 months. So you can see in a 6-month period, we have already reached 134 families and we have maximised their income considerably. There is a phrase that many officers, indeed families, talk about in one side of our authority, and it's property rich and cash poor, and that seems to be being validated by the amount of referrals to the income maximisation team. That's a post that the Change Fund funded, and we're delighted that we're able to maintain that. We also are really focused on engaging with our communities, and Let's Play started off really when parents told us that during the holiday periods, especially the summer holidays, was the biggest pressure. And I know that members and parents from Let's Play have presented to Council before. But Let's Play were that 6.5 weeks where parents really struggle. So what we decided to do was open up our family centres, and we started in 2014 with Madras and in the Euston area, but from summer 2018, all 9 family centres across the whole of East Renfrewshire will offer Let's Play. This is an opportunity for families, children who attend the family centres, but also older siblings, to come along, work with the nursery staff, learn about attachment, adverse childhood experiences, and indeed learn about the positive play experiences that they can do for little money, both indoors and outdoors. Another example of how we have engaged with our communities is recently the Housing Department undertook a study, and I apologise that that's very small, but the detail of that table is in your report. 56 households were captured and 192 residents, 66 of which had children aged 0 to 8. We asked a range of issues, but overwhelmingly we want to know why parents were saying they wanted to let their children out to play, but they couldn't. And overwhelmingly the respondents did value that, but they said it wasn't safe to do so. So we developed a programme called Places to Play. A small improvement team was formed with the Children's Improvement Collaborative Key Change Group to develop an initiative that would meet the needs of both the community but also promote play. Places to Play team used the model for improvement to increase the number of children playing outdoors at least twice a week. We did form a partnership with Impact Arts, a third sector partner, and we delivered a bespoke creative Play Rangers programme. And a range of tests were carried out between June and December. The success of this programme was recognised nationally, where we were one of the finalists in the Scottish Government Quality Improvement Awards. A consequence of the programme is that we have now recruited play champions who are parents who are working with officers to co-produce a Places to Play programme for the Easter and summer holidays. I know that Councillor Merrick has already touched on it, but one of the posts that the Early Years Change Fund funded was to support young person services and increased activity support prevention, in particular teenage pregnancy rates. And we were absolutely delighted for Jim's team when they last week secured the UK-wide Local Government Chronicle Award on the back of the Gold Delivering Better Outcomes category at COSLA. I know that teenage pregnancy rates are relatively low in East Renfrewshire, but 21% of our pregnancies come from the community of Auchenback. This prevention-based programme for young adults was designed to reduce the demand on services, frontline services in particular, social work, health, police and education staff. The impact of this programme has reduced pregnancies in the area of Auchenback by 60%. When we do have pregnancies, one of our targets is to encourage breastfeeding. And although exclusive breastfeeding rates within East Renfrewshire have remained relatively stable over the past 3 to 4 years, with 41% being recorded as exclusively breastfeeding, compared favourably to the national average of 28%, when we analyse that data further into communities, we realise that those mums living in areas of multiple deprivation, that the rate drops to 14.8% breastfeeding. To address this, we funded a trial, a test of an early intervention programme, where we chose 13 mums living in areas of deprivation over a 6-month period and supported them. What I would say to you is, if you look at the average age of our mothers, it really dispelled the belief that it's young mums that don't breastfeed. It's the whole age group. A support worker created bespoke packages and support for each and every mum. And the detail of the report shows you that significantly we made increases, so much so that we're going to roll out that programme to every mum. Children receive high quality early and childcare. This graph shows you our data, and our most recent data for the 30-month assessment. And you can see that 90% of our children are achieving their developmental milestones at this age. The national stretch aim is 85%, but there has been a change to that stretch aim, that it's now going to be 85% across each decile, not as a collective. So we do expect to see some sort of movement, might even be a dip, but we're aware of that, and we are putting in as many supports as we can to make sure that we combat that. Children's developmental milestones are also measured at the start of primary 1. And again, to keep consistency with the 30-month, we have used the 15-16 data, and you can see that 82% have reached their milestones, but 93% of pupils have got no developmental concerns. So that may be that children are just not of that age where they can do some of the things that we observe. However, when we look at it holistically, we are not concerned that it's going to impact on their development. But if I could maybe skip to the last slide, which, apologies members who are part of the Education Committee who may have seen this before. This shows that this really is the cohort who started in 2013 when we started our early years strategy. And not only does it show significant improvement across each decile, it shows the difference we have made for our most vulnerable children and our least affluent, with children's developmental milestones sitting at 68%. We are not complacent, as I said earlier, it should be 85%, but we're certainly going in the right direction, and we hope to continue to do so. Well, we'll need to, more than hope. And many of you will be as delighted as what I was that the Sir Harry Burns Centre, the host to Artley Family Centre, opened in November 2017. We didn't wait for the building to do all this collaborative work. We carried on with the work in anticipation of the building. However, those of you who have managed to visit the centre will not be afraid to admit about how impressive it is and how it will make working collaboratively a lot more accessible for services, but also for families. we will be able to have parents access a range of supports from a range of officers, but also for them to offer supports, because we have built their capacity to do so within this fantastic community. And what a better name for it to be named after someone who's been with us for the whole journey. And I'm now going to hand you back to Julie.
Okay, thanks. So really, that's all, folks. I hope we've demonstrated the impact of the strategy so far, much of which looks really promising, but we do know it is a long-term strategy, so some of the benefits we will see in the future, and they'll be wider than the impact on the council, but also the community justice system as well as health. We'll continue to provide updates, and we will ensure we link with locality planning and fairer East Ren. I think it's important to say there's a really strong synergy between the early years strategy, the work we're doing in community justice, the mental health and addictions work. We're seeking to support the same East Renfrewshire families and help new generations have better chances and better outcomes. So happy to take questions. Equally, Janice and I and others could provide briefings if people have a particular interest, because we know we're running out of time. So.
Okay, can I thank Mrs Murray and Mrs Collins for, I think, a very detailed and a very interesting presentation. As you see, the screens have been timed out, but you did see the presentation, so we'll now move to questions, and happy to take any questions. Councillor Ireland first.
I just wanted to say some of the detail in it is absolutely fantastic. Huge, massive, well done. One point that was of particular interest to me, it was on page 49. I was really pleased to see that the respondents that you spoke to, that overwhelmingly they valued outdoor play, thought it would be beneficial. Anyone that's spoken to me over the last wee while knows that I'm really interested in the whole idea of playing out, and have been having meetings on it, spoken to outside agencies. So that's something that I'm probably going to want to progress, but not at this moment. But I'm really, really pleased to see that there's favourable feedback from residents on getting out, getting the kids to play. Thanks.
So can I have Councillor Lafferty then, Councillor Convery?
Aye, very briefly, Provost, I agree, it's a terrific report, a tremendous bit of work, and I'm glad that when you got the building put up, despite the efforts of the bats to hold things up at the time and having to respect national legislation, you got there. I remember meeting a group at that time. It was male single parents, young fathers. They seemed an extremely enthusiastic group. Is there still work going on with them?
We've got new dads. I think the very nature of early years, that sometimes when children start school, a cohort of parents move on. But we have had interest from a group of new dads and indeed mums that are keen to continue to offer groups and drop-ins and play schemes and the like.
Thank you.
Councillor Convery, then Councillor Wallace.
Aye, thank you, Provost. I also just wanted to congratulate everyone involved in the reducing of the teenage pregnancy programme on winning the Delivering Better Outcomes, the COSLA Award, and the LGC Award for improving public health. The fact that East Renfrewshire has the lowest teenage pregnancy rate in Scotland, and that in Auchenback the percentage of first-time mothers under the age of 19 has fallen by 60% from 22 to 9%. This is something to be proud of and continue to work on.
Councillor Convery and Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Provost. I'm sure it hasn't escaped anybody's notice. The presentation was by both health and social care as much as it was with education, because the two, as we are now beginning to learn, are so closely related. And I'm sure all the work that's been carried out in this initiative in Auchenback, you've already mentioned of some savings that's been made in some departments. I can't imagine the actual savings that are going to be recovered in 20, 25, 30 years when we begin to see the real positive outcomes from this initiative. I have to say I'm totally supportive of it. I'm so disappointed I didn't manage the Harry Burns opening the other day. Hopefully I'll get an opportunity to have a look at it on another occasion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace is well worth a look round. Councillor Swift.
Thank you, Provost. Like everybody else, I think this is a great news story, and there are so many tremendous positives there, and I think they've all been pretty much mentioned by other people, so I wouldn't want to reiterate it. I just would like to say I concur with Councillor Ireland. Overwhelmingly, the respondents valued outdoor play and thought it was beneficial to develop an initiative to support children playing outdoors. I think that it is something that we need to do more of, and I think building on Broome Park is not a good place to start.
Okay, we won't open that particular debate. Councillor Devlin. Councillor Devlin, can you put your mic on, please?
Sorry. There seems to be mixed messages coming out when we come to deprivation and child poverty. When there was a report come out, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, there was a report that basically stated that, you know, children in Artley, 57% of them live in poverty. And I believe the report says that 60% of the children that stay in Dovecote Hall live in poverty. Why is it that, you know, we're getting mixed messages?
I'm not sure, Councillor, that we are giving mixed messages. I think
No, I'm not saying you're giving mixed messages. Why are we getting mixed messages?
I'm not sure that. I think that that's very clear in terms of that poverty has an impact, deprivation has an impact on good outcomes, and I suppose part of our strategy has been to fund a specific income maximisation post that's part of the MARC team that focuses very much on children in poverty. And the focus has been on the most deprived areas.
Yeah.
As Janice referred to, we have discovered that other families are living in poverty too,
Yeah.
with the most deprived areas.
Yeah, you know, sorry, getting back 10 years ago, I believe the only pocket of deprivation and poverty was in a part of Duntal. I think it was Walkmill. I was in the top 10% of the Scottish Deprivation Index. So, I mean, where are we now when you've got a professor stating that 57% of children in a quite affluent part of Barhead live in poverty?
It wasn't so much about the percentage living in poverty. I think the strategy is about reducing the impact of poverty.
Yeah.
So we recognise that there's significant numbers of children across East Renfrewshire, but in particular we have real pockets of poverty. But hopefully some of the things that we put in place are about reducing the impact of it. When we look at the developmental milestones, when we look at their reading and writing and their maths baseline, it's about equipping our children to really rise out that poverty and have as many opportunities as children who are not.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Provost. Perhaps just briefly to reiterate essentially what colleagues have said. I think Councillor Wallace highlighted the partnership working. I think that's key, and I know that Councillor Wallace has always been very supportive of this initiative, and as he says, it's important that it's brave in a way to invest in things like this, because you perhaps don't see the benefits right away, but actually it is about the future. So to commend, I think, the strong partnership working that exists, but also to look forward with confidence into the future development of this work, particularly moving out beyond the areas that we've discussed in terms of Barhead, but also encouraged to see schemes like Let's Play now available in all of our family centres over the summer holiday period, all of our schools and early learning establishments providing the positive parenting programmes and the wealth of opportunities that's going to be available across the council, and that can only develop, I think, as we move forward towards the provision of 1140 hours, and that's going to be key and part of that strategy as well. So I think just to highlight that we're not complacent, the story doesn't stop here, it continues to grow, and we should continue to give our support.
Mrs McMillan, did you want to speak?
It was just very quickly on Councillor Devlin's comments on poverty. As part of the community plan, we talked about those who were at the session earlier on community participation. We talked about the new community plan in Fair East Renfrewshire, the local outcome improvement plan, and one of the key issues in that is looking at child poverty. So as we bring that forward, I think we'll be bringing more data forward in various reports about that, because it is a long-term issue, and the early years work is one of the actions that we'll do. We've always known we have issues with child poverty in the area. That wasn't new to us in that report, but what we've got is a long-term strategy to address it, and the early years is a very, very strong part of that strategy.
Yeah.
Councillor Buchanan.
Thanks, Provost. Yeah, I think just to again thank Janice and Julie for bringing the report this evening. I thank all the staff that have worked over the years on this programme, because it is, as we have seen, absolutely vital and makes a significant difference. I think we all recognise that adverse childhood experiences have an impact not only in childhood, but on that child's impact throughout the rest of its life. And that is significant. And we've known that for some time. And normally we've done the firefighting bit to try and pick up those pieces and deal with the crisis aspect of that. But moving into the prevention aspect, to prevent those experiences in the first place, is absolutely massive. And as Councillor Wallace has alluded to, we will not necessarily see the benefits of that for maybe 15, 20 years' time. But I have absolutely no doubt that we will see the benefits over that period of time, because we are making interventions that will have a significant impact in the future. And that's, I think, to be recognised, to be applauded, that our teams have done so well in recognising those impacts. And it's great that we have had Sir Harry Burns not only come to us early on and enable us to be ahead of the game in taking forward our early learning aspects and our child prevention aspects, but to enable us to ultimately culminate in the opening of the centre, which is an absolutely fantastic facility, which will continue this work and improve on the outcomes that we are already starting to see. And I hope that as that rolls out across the authority, we will indeed see that spreading across the area and ensure that we continue to strive for the best outcomes for our children, which will leave us in a significantly better position in the future for all manner of reasons. So thanks very much to all of the team.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Buchanan. Again, it was a presentation, so we just note the presentation, but can I thank both Mrs Murray and Mrs Collins for the detailed presentation, which was excellent. Can I now move on to item number 11, which is the scheme for members' remuneration and expenses. This is a new scheme from COSLA, which increases slightly the salaries. Don't laugh, I know. If you're an MP, it might be worth something. But also seek approval tonight for the changes to processes and procedures for landlines and broadband. Again, it's for approval, but happy to take any questions that any individual councillors may have. Councillor MacDonald. Well, there are plenty of people that might think the Council's audio-visual equipment is not a sensible way to spend public money, but perhaps a debate we won't go there at the moment. Councillor Aiken, did you want to say something as well?
Just to second that, council tax is going through the roof. We live in difficult times, and I think councils could forgo this pay rise.
As little as it may be, I should add as well, it's a small increase, but I think any increase at all is a bit disingenuous for us to be taking this increase at a time where we are asking residents across East Renfrewshire to tighten their belts very, very tightly for very stripped-back basic frontline services due to budgetary cuts. And I think we have to be mindful of that as elected members.
Okay, major point. I think it's fair to say, though, it's open to any councillor to not take the expenses, so you're absolutely free as an individual. If you don't wish to take it, don't take it. These are national salaries, and there is a view that East Renfrewshire councils should get the same remuneration as councillors in similar sized authorities. And we've also for our elected officers, for our appointed officers, always taken trade union rates from the job. And I'm a trade unionist. I believe in paying people properly for the job. But it's absolutely open to individuals. If they don't wish to take the increase, don't take it.
And I would say I would probably not take it, but what I would say from that is, in the culture of the progressive council that we aspire to be, that perhaps we should be the first council in Scotland to not take it and simply be that person, be that group.
You've made your point. You can lead by example by not taking your increase if you so wish. Any other Councillor Miller?
Thank you very much. Notwithstanding what Councillor MacDonald has said, I've spoken to my group, and none of us, we're all not going that precious about taking it, so none of us will take it.
Okay. Do you wish to comment?
Thank you, Provost. Just to echo what you've said, that it is open to all elected members to not take the increase if they choose not to do so. If you are minded not to take it, if you could please let me know. A note from the current scheme that the next pay date for members is the 20th of April with a deadline for submitting any claims of the 6th. So if you could let me know before then, I can get in touch with payroll and let them know that you don't wish to take the increase. I will need something in writing from you, however. I can't go on the basis of someone just saying something to me. I'll need something in writing from you, and I can make the arrangements for individual members.
Okay, thank you for that. It's quite clear. Councillor Buchanan.
Thanks, Provost. I think in general, I think we all view that, although we don't have any remit in the setting of the amounts they are done nationally at government level, I'm quite certain that most councillors will take on board the comments that have been made, and certainly I know that discussions with my own group, we would look to doing a similar aspect and not taking the increase. But that is an individual choice, and it's up to individual members to then make that choice. What I would say, though, is I don't know that I'd be spending any saving from that on the council's audiovisual equipment, because I think there are perhaps far more things that we could use those payments for over the next year, certainly. So that would be my only clause in respect of the initial proposal. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor.
I think similarly the Labour Group is of the view that not an astronomical increase and something that obviously for individual members to consider not taking. So I think that's the comments and points are made fairly.
Okay. Councillor Wallace.
If I could just say, Provost, it's unfortunate we didn't get the same feeling when councillors were awarded 13% a few months ago. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, well, perhaps we'll be setting an example that our MPs and MSPs are all much better paid than ourselves, will no doubt follow. Anyway, I think we've done this to death. Can we move on? Do you really need to? Thank you. Okay. You must, yes.
So, it was a wee point of clarification. Page 71, travel by council car. When will that be published?
There's a report in preparation which will be going to the Civic Hospitality Committee with a new protocol for the use of the council car. So once that gets through that committee, it will be widely shared with all members.
Well, I'll see that when it comes to committee. Thank you.
Okay. Right, can we move on to item number 12, which is the Newton Mearns area Phase 1 on-street waiting and loading order 2018. The report in front of you is seeking approval for the making and confirmation of the order. I'm happy to take any questions or comments that any of the councillors may have on this. Wallace.
Thank you, Provost. It's just in reference to the loaning, the change in the loaning. Starts off with that there being no restrictions, and now the suggestion is going to be loads of restrictions. You aren't going to allowed to park there at all, and then it's been sort of brought back slightly. The concern I have with the loaning, it's not my ward, but it will impact in my ward. In fact, it already impacts in my ward, in that when the loaning fills up, they just move down to Torrington and Treemain, which is just absolutely horrendous. It's just become a car park down there. As many of you will probably realise, when we put a bicycle lane into Davyland Road, we pretty much halved the amount of parking, because it became that parking had to be parallel to the curb rather than at right angles to it, and that's had a huge impact. Now, The difficulty we do have is that at the White Craigs railway station, we don't own the land there as far as I know. It's Network Rail that own that. I'd just like to think, or I would like to have some kind of notification from the Roads Department and the people who are sitting on the Strathclyde Passenger Transport Committee, etc., is what is the long-term plan for this? Because it's just getting absolutely horrendous. And I tend to feel that making these kind of small changes here to the loaning, all very good for residents that are there, it's just pushing the problem elsewhere. And I would like to see, I actually would like to see some kind of presentation from the Roads Department what we're going to do about transport round here. And I mean in terms of how we are going to get people to use public transport but not have such a negative impact on local residents. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you. What I would say is that I think the people in the Merns area, especially around about where the shopping centre is, are absolutely sickened by the whole situation with cars and etc. in that area. I totally agree with you from a rail point of view. We want to make sure that our train service from there is great for people who are using it backwards and forwards. But we have to have, well, I was going to say, to contradict myself to a certain extent, I know that the staff who are trying to deal with roads, etc. over there are doing their damnedest to try and accommodate people, the routes, etc. over there. But it doesn't help when in the last week a lot of people have suddenly found themselves having to hand out cash for at the railway stations. It's been badly handled, that situation. So really I would ask if the officials would go back to where they were and say, OK, we'll cut these services until, or the charges, until we've actually worked out what we're doing in that situation. Thank you.
Councillor Swift.
Thank you, Provost. I'd really like to commend Mr Docherty for the work that he's done. He's been very responsive to residents. He has listened tremendously to people. He has, like Councillor Wallace suggested, pulled back where there has been pushback from other people, commuters in particular, who needed some degree of parking. So, genuinely, Councillor Gilbert mentioned the Avenue, which has been horrendous, the overspill there. But actually, one of the things that they've done that's been, I think, that is terrific, is that they're going to provide better protection around the schools, which has been a source of considerable concern to lots of residents and parents. And one of the reasons people drive their kids to school is that they're terrified of all the people that are blocking all the path, all the roads. So it's not safe for the children to walk to school. So we're actually doing some really, really effective stuff. And I would like to, as I say, commend Mr Docherty. I think he's done a fantastic job.
Thank you for a few. Councillor Merrick.
So I'd just like to echo what Councillor Wallace said, which is also my ward, and particularly the changes to the loaning. That people who park their cars completely disrespect ward boundaries, so they do have the feeling that the problem's just been moved on. But I do understand that a full consultation is coming out for the Giffnock area, hopefully by this summer. I'm not sure of the exact date. And then we'll know for sure what effect these changes have had, assuming that the schools are still in at that point.
Well, I think the Giffnock one is the same sort of exercise. Once this is approved, Giffnock will follow at a council meeting fairly shortly, but it will be based in the consultation that we've had in the same way as this has been based in the consultation. Councillor Lafferty.
It's just briefly to appreciate what Councillor Swift said about Mr Docherty. I know that the Roads Department went well beyond any legal requirements in terms of consultation to ensure that they could anticipate any problems and try and resolve them or take into account local feelings on a number of matters. So, glad to hear that was done.
I think we all recognise this is an extremely difficult and sensitive issue. People don't like change, and you never ever produce anything that suits everybody. Councillor Buchanan, do you want to speak?
Briefly, thanks, Provost. I think just to again commend the work that's been done on this and the extensive consultation that has been carried out. It has been very difficult at times, as any of these decisions, as we know, over the years always are, but I think we actually have a reasonably good outcome on this and taking it forward, because it has targeted a number of key areas where we know there are significant problems. In relation to Councillor Gilbert, I think what Councillor Gilbert was referring to was the issue around Patterton Overflow Car Park, where we know that some changes have been implemented and that residents have suffered. So we are looking at that. I've certainly asked the questions like Councillor Gilbert to get some further information on it, but it's a slightly different entity than this parking issue. But it does touch on the problems that we have in terms of parking and transport across the area, as has already been mentioned, and it continues to be a problem, and we do need to look at new ways of trying to manage that, whether that be with meetings with Network Rail to increase the capacity that they provide, or indeed with SPT in order to try and accommodate some of the other services that they provide, and look at the longevity of that, and we'll certainly make every effort to do that. I know I'm meeting with SPT soon to start, and I'll raise some of the issues and concerns that we have, so more than happy to do that.
Okay, well, sorry, Councillor Grant.
Could I just ask for some clarification? I know that some of the residents, particularly in Maple Avenue, when people are parking all day, and when the resident says, "You're parking here all day and we can't get in and out of our drive," and they get a mouthful of snash from residents, I'm a bit concerned that when these restrictions are posted up, people are going to be really provoked into mouthing off a lot of nasty things to residents. Who should these residents be in touch with? Is it the police or quite who? Because sometimes people have been so aggressive and nasty when they've been parking in places where they shouldn't be parking. So is it the police that residents should be going to? Who?
Well, my understanding is the police. I mean, if a driveway, for example, is being blocked by a car, then you should phone the police. That's the advice that they give, certainly to the councillors when they're attending community councils in my ward, where there are instances of unfortunate instances of parking and people blocking driveways when they're dropping kids or picking them up, and sometimes for longer periods. So it is a police matter, and clearly if somebody's it's a traffic violation, or if somebody's committing what would be a breach of the peace by shouting and bawling, I would expect the police to be involved in it. We have, sorry, Councillor MacDonald wishes to say something.
I'm just mindful to mention that, and perhaps the leader can advise me on this. In the last parliamentary term in Holyrood, Sandra White, MSP, member for Glasgow Kelvin, actually was working on a piece of parking legislation with regards to 2 and 4 wheels up on the pavement. And I'm minded to mention that I've understood that this is potentially going to come back up in this parliamentary term again, and as I understand it, it's gaining significant support at national level. I'm wondering, therefore, whether any kind of legislative issues that we deal with here locally in terms of parking, we should be mindful to potentially adjourn until the national legislation potentially comes through, because what I potentially see happening here is that if her private member's bill is successful, we could be in a much greater predicament in terms of how we're going to be able to accommodate cars to park completely off the street, which is one of the proposals of that bill. And I speak to him obviously because she's a member of your party, and I was just wondering whether you had any inside information as to what was going on with that.
Perhaps, I mean, you're asking about forthcoming legislation. I'd rather doubt it will impact greatly on what we're trying to do here, but I will ask perhaps Mr Cahill if he wants to comment on it, just in the technical aspects of it.
No, I'm aware of it. It's a private member's bill. I don't have any of the detail with me just now. I think it's at early stages, and if it is advanced, it would come through as a bill for consultation through COSLA, and we would pick it up that way, I would expect. And referring to your previous comments, it is an offence to cause an obstruction, and it's also an offence to behave in an aggressive or abusive manner towards any resident. Those are matters for the police.
Well, we have done, an extensive consultation here. Are we going to fire ahead with this, Councillor?
Yeah, just to come back on it, I'm not aware of how far it has progressed. As I say, we know it's going through, but I'm not aware of the overall impact that will have, because if it does become legislation, then as Mr Cahill has reported, it will come back through COSLA, etc., and we would look at that. But at the moment, I think it's important that we take the action that we can take, and it's within our gift to take, because there are many incidents that are very near misses, and we need to deal with the situation that we currently have, and we are in a position to be able to address those circumstances, and on that basis I would therefore urge support of the paper.
We're all content with that? We'll await the government one with interest. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 13. Well, before I actually discuss this, I need your approval to exclude the press and public, and therefore I would move that we so do, because as you'll be aware, we are about to discuss sensitive commercial matters, and it would be normal on those occasions to do this in private and not have that sensitive commercial information discussed publicly. So I would seek your approval to remove the press and public. Okay. Okay. Councillor Aiken.
I wanted to speak first. I wanted to move an amendment to the resolution, but I wasn't allowed to do so. Is that now gone? Is that now finished? No, just everybody said agrees, so.
A vote on it. I'm asking for approval for the council to have this matter, because it's commercially sensitive, as we do with all of these things, to have the press and public removed before we discuss the matter. Are you moving something different to that? That's what I'm trying to establish.
Correct, yes. I want to move an amendment to the resolution to include the press and public. In my opinion, there are no data protection or GDPR reasons for the exclusion of the press and public. The agenda item does not involve personal or sensitive information as I understand it. The spirit of FOI legislation is in favour of disclosure of information and of transparency, not decisions taken behind closed doors. I believe it's in the public interest not to exclude the press and public, so I'd like to move for an amendment to this resolution to include the press and public. Thank you.
You have a seconder for it? Right, okay. The press and public clearly explains the context why we do that. I require a seconder for that, and we'll move to a vote. Councillor Miller.
In supporting the resolution, I think it has to be made clear that this paper has been called into Cabinet, who had approved it, and it was called in due to lack of information. Since then, we've had considerably more information, and the more we get, the murkier the decision becomes. I really feel that the Cabinet should have questioned this paper, and in doing so would have grave concerns as to the legitimacy of the proposed sale, but I do support the resolution.
Well, I'm more than happy to have a proper debate on it, but it has to be done, as I say, in a normal fashion. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Provost. Again, like Councillor Miller, I have found some interesting information, and I genuinely think that we should probably not even consider putting this site up for sale or approving the Cabinet paper. But I think that sort of conversation needs to be held in a closed room.
Okay, there is a motion and an amendment, and the motion is to exclude the press and public. So all those in favour of the motion to exclude the press and public, could I ask you to raise your hands? Okay. And all those against, all those supporting Councillor Aiken's amendment? Two. Okay. So the motion is carried by 15 votes to 2. So before we continue, could I ask the members of the press and public to please leave? Thank you. Councillor MacDonald.
On that note, I've had a discussion with Councillor Aiken, and myself and Councillor Aiken are now going to excuse ourselves from the council meeting. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sure that will be recorded in a minute. Thank you.